Thanks, Mom. All right. You're doing great, sweetie.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Sweet.
All right, everybody, snow.
We're good? All right. Good morning. Thank you all for having me. So today's talk is going to be a little bit different. Typically, I have graphs and pictures and memes, and you'll see soon I just have one word. So this one's kind of coming a little bit more from the heart, but to introduce myself first. Oh, we have no slides. Has that been a thing?
Well, not exactly. I thought we had it up earlier. Didn't we have it up on the screen earlier? No laptop? What's up? Unplug and replug, I guess? Is my dongle still up there? That works pretty well. Oh, I see something now.
This is what happens after a year of COVID. We forgot how to run all this stuff. Probably.
I mean, I can keep going without slides.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. What is that just the USB-C?
Is my dongle still up there?
It's not going to fit this.
Oh, that's USB-C.
No, it's
My
not.
dongle is USB-C.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not USB-C. That's the problem.
And I have my laptop here.
I got my laptop too.
Yeah, do you have
Oh, what is my dongle?
It's on mine.
Oh, okay. Well, you can USB drive?
Yeah.
You have a safe USB drive.
USB-C or normal USB.
You have a regular USB drive?
The presentation will resume shortly.
I'm recording this too. I think this is background.
right below the folder.
Right below what?
Yep.
This guy?
Yep. Cool. Yeah, HDMI through this guy?
Oh, shoot.
Yay.
Okay.
All right, take two. All right, so just a little bit about myself first. I work for IBM's X-Force Red. With that being said, this talk is my inappropriate views, bad language, all that shit. 100% me, does not represent my employer. I've won some cool competitions. Physical security assessments are by far my favorite thing to do. Knock on wood. I've never been arrested so far. Disney fangirl. I love board games. Anyone here else like board games? What are some of your favorites? Catan. Lots of Catans. Bears versus babies. Awesome. My favorite lately is Pandemic, just because of all of this. But yeah, lots of board game fun. Before I got into security, I did special effects makeup. I also did sales, but that doesn't sound as cool. And I like to cook in my free time. So a little bit about this talk today. I'm going to talk about my journey into Infosec and some of the things that helped progress my... Does nobody like the splash zone? Like, it is empty up here. No one? All right. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my journey into Infosec. Aww. My journey into Infosec and some of the things that helped me in my career and how I progressed. Then I want to turn around and talk about y'all and some things that can hopefully benefit you, especially in your career and as you're progressing. And then leave plenty of time at the end for questions. Now, I am very informal, and if you have questions, do not wait till the end. Raise your hand. Like, I am down to go down rabbit holes, tangents, completely change this talk if you want. So, questions, raise your hand, interrupt me. It's all good. All right, so my journey into Infosec. So it all started at DEF CON 19. Now, this is the first year I went. When I went, I just wanted to go to Vegas. I had no interest at all in going to a hacking conference. However, I had a group of friends that were going, and they got me a ticket or a badge, and they're like, okay, you gotta come at least, like, check it out. And I was like, no, it kind of smells bad. Like, really fucking bad. And so I sat in a couple talks, and it all went over my head. Completely over my head. I fell asleep in a malware reversing talk. Like, it was bad. So I got up at one point, I was like, okay, I have to, like, find something entertaining. So I found the lockpicking village, and I absolutely loved it. I walked in, someone was like, hey, have you ever picked a lock before? I'm like, no, I've never picked a lock before. And they taught me everything. And I got off handcuffs. Like, it was a blast. So when I left there, I still had hours to burn before the end of the day. And I found the social engineering village, and the doors were shut. So I go in there and I sit down, and they had live calls going on. So to kind of back things up, I'm going to explain how the social engineering capture the flag works in case anyone here is not familiar. So it's a competition where a group of contestants are given a target company. Normally it's a Fortune 500 company. So before they even get to DEF CON, half of the competition is going out and finding flags against their target company through open source intelligence or OSINT gathering. And so they go out, they find the flags, and then the second part of the competition is live at DEF CON. You're in a soundproof booth in front of a bunch of hackers making live phone calls to their targets to try to elicit these flags. So anyways, I show up in this room, and someone's in the booth making phone calls. And it took me a second to realize what was going on. But once I did, I'm like, oh man, like, this was meant for me. Like, this is so cool. Like, they're just talking to strangers and getting information out of them. Like, I could do this. So I learned everything I could about social engineering. I went home that year. I got all the books I could find on influence techniques and rapport building and everything I could. And then the next year, I signed up to compete. I need to talk a little bit closer to the mic. And so I went back, I learned everything, and then when the signups came around to do the competition, I was really excited. I signed up. Then I found out I got accepted. Then I did all my OSINT, wrote my report. Then I'm on the plane to DEF CON. I was terrified. I remembered watching that person in that booth making those calls, and like my palms start sweating, like total like pre-panic attack. Like I felt it coming on. Cause I went back and I was thinking, I have my comfort zone, right? Like I know what I'm good at. But this is like way fucking outside of it. Like way outside of it. And I did not want to do it. Like I had to hype myself up so bad just to even like show up into DEF CON. And so like right before my call, like I was honestly thinking of ways to fake my death. Like I did not want to do this. And it was honestly like incredibly terrifying for me. So I do it. I totally talk myself into it, and I do it. Really, really outside my comfort zone. And I did pretty well that year. I learned a lot. Did not win at all, but I learned a lot. So went back home, realized I needed to learn a lot more about OSINT, right? I taught myself a lot about social engineering. Now I needed to learn about OSINT and like the security side of things, right? Because when I was asking people things like what kind of mail client they were using, I didn't understand the risk behind that. So I went home, taught myself that stuff, went back the next year. right? DEFCON 20 or 21. Same thing. Like I'm on the plane, like nervous as fuck. But because I'd done it before, right? Like it's something that wasn't as scary because I'd been in that position, because I'd got out of my comfort zone. So I show up, I get in the booth, ring, more fucking rings. Nobody answered any of the calls. It was so, like, I just felt so defeated. And so when I went back that year, I'm like, all right, well, I did all that, those 2 years of teaching myself everything, and it really, really, really sucked. And so I wasn't going to do it the next year. I was like, you know what? I learned what I could. I'm done. But I saw that they had the next year at DEFCON 22, they were doing something different. They were doing team events. So it would be 2 people making the phone calls. So I'm like, all right, this is my last year. I'm just going to do it this year, and then I'm done. And so I'm assigned my teammate, and I was really excited to work with someone. And, we do all of our OSINT, we write a report, turn it in, get to Vegas, and he ghosts me so hard, like would not text me back. So I'm like sitting there frantically texting him like, hey, our call is scheduled in 30 minutes. Where are you? Like horrified. And so 5 minutes before we're about to go on, he texts me like, I'm way too hungover. I can't make it. So I'm like, cool, because you had to have 2 people. Luckily, I found a volunteer. And the other thing that was really good is I over-prepare way too much, and I printed copies of all of our stuff. I created call scripts. So pretty much this person that stood in, all they had to do was read from the script. And we fucking kicked ass. Like, it was really, really good. And we won that year. So super, super exciting. Thank you. But all because I got out of my comfort zone that first year, right? On that plane, I could have easily backed out. And if you go to that competition, you'll see a lot of people just won't show up, just like my partner that year. Because it's terrifying. So I look back at where I am today and how it started. Like, if I would have just not done it, like, I wouldn't be on this stage today. And so once we had won, I had a lot of people, like, before the end of the conference, come up to me like, wow, you're really good at this. Can you come do some social engineering tests for my company? And I was like, oh shit, like, that's right. This is an actual career. It's not just a hobby for people. And so I was really excited. I went back to my house afterwards, and I decided to reach out to 2 people in the industry. I was really excited to ask them, how do I actually make this a career? Right? This is something I want to do full time. Lying to people. Like, give me money to lie to people. Yes, please. And so the first person that I talked to, he said, no one would ever hire a social engineer. He said, you have to be a pen tester or do all these other things, but you will never get a career being a social engineer. So it's like, cool. So I reached out to someone else, and she told me I should become a project manager. Which, again, not even close to the same job. So I took a week and I felt so defeated because I had spent really 3 years self-teaching myself everything that I could about this, right? I had people asking me to do this for them. Like, they wanted to give me money. And I had 2 people that I had looked up to told me that I couldn't do it. So I spent a week just really honestly depressed. But I'm also a very, vindictful, petty, spiteful, salty as fuck person. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove them wrong. And so what I did is at that point, I started my own company. I did a lot of freelancing work, and I reached out to all those people at DEF CON who wanted me to do the work for them. And I started growing, and I started learning a lot of stuff, and completely got out of my comfort zone. And from there, now today, I've owned my own business. I've worked at 3 companies. I freelanced through, and did white labeling through tons of different organizations. But I always think back to that moment that I was on the plane heading to DEF CON 20 for the first CTF, SECTF, and just wanted to chicken out so badly. Like, it would have just been so easy to be like, you know what, guys, I'm good. I'm backing out. Because a lot of people do it, because it's terrifying. But because I got out of my comfort zone, right? That's where I am today. So I'm very, very excited I took those risks. It was extremely hard. Now, when it actually comes to testing, there are ways that are also very terrifying, especially when it comes to physical security assessments. One of the ones where you could definitely say I was outside my comfort zone, this was about 4 years ago, and it was a client in downtown LA, and the scope was really, really simple. They wanted to, one, see if we could even get into their location, right? They had RFID, they had guards, they had cameras, they had everything. So can we even get in? The second thing is they wanted us to plant USBs around inside of their building to see if employees would open them up. And then the third thing is they wanted to see if we could actually ask an employee to open it up, like how they would respond. Would they actually do it? So I did all of my OSINT. I did my reconnaissance. So, the day before, I was in the parking lot. We were checking out the building. We identified the door that most employees used to go in the morning, right? It wasn't the main entrance. It was a side employee door. So the plan was to show up the next morning and tailgate in. So we do that. So I'm in my car. I see a lot of people heading into the building, and I follow behind. Now, there was this lady in front of me who, just like everyone else, they didn't let the door slam in front of the person behind them, right? They were very nice. And she holds the door, but she looks behind and looks at me. And in those brief, 2 seconds, I saw in her eyes that she knew she shouldn't have been doing that. And that's something I see all the time in physical security assessments. She was like, oh shit, I don't recognize this person, but she also didn't know what to say, right? People don't want to be confrontational, or maybe she didn't even know how to report me. She didn't know what to say. So she still let me in. So I go in and I start doing my USB drops. I found a mail room, which is my favorite place to do them because it actually has, people's names on mail slots. So I take a white envelope, I'll write the name on it, put the USB in there, and put it in a mail slot. And they're so much more likely to be open that way. So I'm going around, dropping them off. I'm like, okay, I have to meet my last objective. I have to ask someone to plug in the USB. So what I did is I left through the back employee entrance and I went into the front door. And I was talking to the receptionist. Absolutely the best place to ask someone to open it is through the receptionist. So I explained to her, hey, I'm interviewing at the company next door. I completely left my resume on my printer. I am so sorry. Can you please print it off for me? So as we're sitting there making small talk, and she's totally buying it, thank God, there are some people behind me talking. And so I start listening, and the guy says, ma'am, can you describe the intruder? I'm like, oh shit. And so she starts describing me to a T, right? She's like, she's wearing a blue blazer and a white jacket, and she's short and white and chubby. I'm just like, wow, okay. Do we have to go that far? So completely describing me, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh man, I am so burned right now. You know how people like the fight or flight? No, fight or flight. There we go. Yeah, I did the third option. I freeze. So I just stood there, hoping the situation would, just disappear. So I'm talking to the receptionist, and she's opening the USB, and I'm just, walking as awkwardly as I can out of there, so they can't, see my face, and she doesn't recognize me, but completely out of my comfort zone. Lots of assessments, especially in the social engineering world, will put you outside of that. So progressing into my career, I now actually am able to lead a team of other social engineers, which is really, really exciting for me, especially going back to that time when someone said no one would ever hire just a social engineer. But one of the things I strongly believe in is leading from the front, right? I wouldn't ask my team to do something that I didn't feel comfortable doing. So I have a lot of people who are new to phishing or voice phishing, social engineering phone calls. So what I like to do is I actually like to place the first handful of calls while they're listening too, right? And that way they can hear how it goes. But one of the things is I know it's scary for a lot of people, especially in this kind of work. And they're going outside of their comfort zone. So sometimes, even if you're not going outside of your comfort zone, you're helping push people outside of theirs to progress in their career. All right, so moving on to y'all. How many people here would classify themselves as introverts? Show of hands. a good amount of people, right? And I think that's very, very common in our industry, right? We have a lot of introverts. And one of the things that is really hard to get outside of your comfort zone is meeting new people, right? Networking with people. And it's extremely difficult. And that's one of the things that really helped me progress in my career is going to conferences, meeting people. Every single job that I've had is because of a connection that I've made through networking. I can't explain like how much this helps. Now I'm actually going to ask y'all to do something right now, and some of you will probably hate me, especially the people who raise their hands. I want to take 5 minutes, and I want everyone to get up and introduce themselves and meet someone new. Now please keep in mind the bans and social distancing and all that good stuff, but just for 5 minutes, go meet someone new, right? Help them get out of your comfort zone, you get out of your comfort zone, and now you have a brand new connection at the beginning of the day, and we'll see how that goes. So just 5 minutes. Make a new friend. That's all I'm asking. What?
I didn't post it because I wanted you to have first right of refusal. Zoom in and see if you like your face. Okay, what about that one? Same or different? That's okay. You want me to not? That's fine. I'm not going to go meet new people. They won't. Because I'm scary. I'll go meet them.
And I'm going to grab this and move it down just because that big orange thing just attracts everything on the camera. If Rocky needs it, I'll put it down here. I'm just struggling to get it right there. Just so long.
All right, if we want to start heading back to our seats. All right, show of hands, how many people met someone brand new for the first time today? Yay! Either y'all are lying or hopefully you're not. Awesome. Great. So, sometimes meeting people new, talking to someone you've never talked to before at a conference, right? Like, it can be completely intimidating, and I totally get that. So hopefully this was at least a good little warm-up, little exercise to get y'all to do that. So, some ideas to get y'all out of your comfort zone. One of the things, too, is you want to be able to do things to give back to your community, right? So you're getting out of your comfort zone, you're providing to the community, and you're also probably learning things in the process. So here's a good handful of ideas. Now, I also get a common complaint from people when I say something like, have you thought about starting a blog? Right? And it's already been done before. Like, why would I blog about these new tools I'm researching or instruction guides? Because someone's already done it. Right? Have you all thought that? Yeah, I'm getting lots of nods. So, my thing against that, and I think you should still proceed, is because just because it's been done before doesn't mean it's, one, been done right, two, been done recently, and three, it hasn't been done in your perspective, right? So the other day I was trying to figure out how to use a new tool, and I found tons of content, tons of blog posts that explain very detailed how to use it, but the thing about it was all the previous version of the tool. I couldn't find anything for the brand new version that recently came out. And the other thing is I didn't get to see, right? So I couldn't find any information about this brand new tool. So again, if you create content, that is awesome. The other thing I love to see is when people fail, right? I like to see steps that people take to fail, because one, it shows they're human, but two, I'm probably doing those same steps and I'm failing. That's why I'm trying to get help. So it's really interesting to see other perspectives and how other people do things. So again, that's just a couple of ideas that I had for how to get out of your comfort zone. Now I'm going to give you homework, right? I want you to think about something that you can do either in your personal life or your work life that you've been scared to do. And I want you to commit it to memory, something that's going to put you outside of your comfort zone. I want you to think about it. Now, once you have that, I actually want you to think about a plan of how to get there, right? How are you going to be able to accomplish this goal? Maybe it's a new skill set. So are you going to take a half a day on the weekends to learn it? Are you going to block off your calendar for 30 minutes Monday through Friday, right? It's one thing to come up with your idea, but actually having a plan to execute the idea is half the battle. All right, so I am wrapping up before some questions to answer. So some key takeaways. Really just get outside your comfort zone. I, again, keep going back to that day that I was sitting on the plane and just did not even want to go to DEF CON. And I am so glad I did. And there's so many moments when I look back on my life where I'm like, I was so nervous or I did not want to do something. And those moments actually ended up being the most life-changing for me, right? So many things come once you actually get outside of that comfort zone. So with that being said, question time. And if you don't have questions and you can think of some later, for better or worse, my DMs are open on Twitter. So I know, very brave. So far it hasn't been burned. Yes, question.
I have more of a prompt. So you talked about having a background that wasn't necessary and industry specific. So you talked about doing the DEF CON SECTF, but you also had a really cool experience with NOLACon. But you also talked about how like makeup and graphic arts and things like that were a part of your prior background. Can you kind of tell people about the cool thing that you pulled that background information into to being successful with that particular exercise?
Yeah, so having the background in special effects makeup, I got to do a lot of things like make prosthetics, make fake blood, all that kind of good stuff. I actually got to work on a lot of like really cool like indie and low budget college stuff, and if you've seen it, I will judge you horribly. But because of that skill set, I'm actually able to leverage some of it into what I do. So there's this really cool competition called SaintCon, and it happens every year in Utah. And so they had a competition called the Vault, and it was a physical security challenge. And it's actually a whole makeshift building, or I should say room. So on the front door it had RFID, it had lockpicks, it had on the inside motion sensors, alarms, tons of different things. And so I competed in 2017, and the team I was on with, JC and Davis, so we got in, we got through the obstacles, but the last piece was a biometric safe. You needed a thumbprint to open it. And so we did our first run, we got in, we realized we needed that, and we're like, oh shit, like how are we gonna get this part? And you couldn't lockpick it. That was the other thing. You had to like, and you couldn't cut someone's finger off, unfortunately. And so what I did was, we did get a fingerprint. We lifted it from someone. We had them hold something. So I had a good fingerprint. But what I did is I went back and I created a whole lab of trying to make that fingerprint, right? I tried lifting it with charcoal. I tried gummy bear stuff. Like I tried like everything you could think of and read about to do it. And it was so frustrating because I was up the entire night. And then it hit me like 4 a.m. like, I can make a prosthetic of someone's fingerprint. Like, why am I not just doing this? And so I was actually able to get a working proof of concept, and then I got there and I was able to keep going through the steps. But I actually recreated, with the prosthetic, someone's fingerprint, and we used that to get into the safe, and we were able to win that year from that competition. It was really cool. It was really fucking cool. Thank you. Yes?
So when you were talking about the part where you were going into the building, was a CLA one or whatever, and you ended up sneaking out with your blue blazer on. But when you were walking in and you noticed the person had the apprehension on their face, I was hoping you could maybe dive in, if there is more to tell, about just exactly what happened next, how you gave them the feeling like, I know it's not okay, but it's okay, and you're going to keep going. What happened to that exact moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I was tailgating the woman and I saw the look on her face and I knew she realized she had fucked up, but she didn't know what to do. I put myself in an employee's position, right? Like I try to do a lot of method acting. I know that sounds corny, but it helps, right? I'm thinking, okay, if I'm just an employee walking into this building, why would I say anything to her? Right? Like I wouldn't, even though I noticed she had that look on her face, I wasn't going to like correct her or try to like validate my reason to be there. I wasn't going to say anything because a regular employee wouldn't do that. So I just smiled and confidently just kept walking. Now, I didn't know where I was going once I got in because I didn't find like any building layouts or pictures. So I actually ended up turning and walking like almost into the men's bathroom. But I was confident and she had turned at that point and that's fine. But a lot of times it's putting yourself in the position of who you're pretending to be. And so absolutely, like when I would have first started doing this, I probably would have wanted to be like, oh no, like I'm just here for this. But I was impersonating someone, so I couldn't justify that. So I just tried to put myself in that position and be as confident as I could.
You be that person in the morning who hasn't had their coffee yet.
Yeah.
Really paying attention and just going to keep on going.
Absolutely. Yep. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned you went to the mailroom. Was the mailroom not locked off? Not having security, or was it just one of those places where
Yeah, so the mailroom, it was definitely not locked off. The door was propped open. It was actually propped open by a shred bin that had like no protection on pop, so that was kind of fun. I had to take some pictures of that stuff. But yeah, inside it had like printing areas, different shred bins, and then it had like the big cubicle wall with like employees' names and mail slots where you could put stuff. So very, very open. Any other questions? Y'all are kind of quiet now. No? Yes.
You mentioned method acting. Have you taken acting classes or like looked up that kind of stuff just to, I don't know, help with that?
Yep. So I grew up a theater kid. Like I did tons of acting, so I think that's definitely helped. As an adult, I haven't done anything like that. I have done improv, which if you're really wanting to get into social engineering, I 100% recommend doing improv because it will put you on your feet, make you feel uncomfortable, which is exactly what happens in these situations, but not since being an adult. I think the biggest thing is getting in that mindset, right, of who I'm pretending to be. I'll tell a really quick story here before I go. So speaking of the method acting, so this was a physical security assessment I did in Amsterdam, and it was really hard to get into the building. But long story short, like I got there, it was a bunch of headaches, and I walked in to do recon because the building was brand new, and there was it wasn't even on Google Maps yet. So I had no clue what I was getting into. I couldn't find pictures. So I walk into the building, and the second I walk in, the receptionist is like, no, you need to go. And like, I still to this day don't know what like gave that away that I shouldn't have been there. And so I was frustrated. I was like terrified. Like I flew all that way to like get into this building and I walk in to do recon and I'm already thrown out. And so I went back and I just started researching it as much as I can, trying to find an angle. And I found that their Americas had an investor relations branch. And so what I did is I called the receptionist at the Amsterdam branch, pretending to be someone high up in the company in Americas, and said, hey, we have this investor relations contractor coming out to survey the site, to meet with potential investors. She's going to be there tomorrow. Please, make sure she has whatever she wants. And they're like, okay, cool. I'm like, oh my God, it's working. And so I get there, and the receptionist greets me with coffee, and just like asking what they can do for me. I'm like, well, I would love a tour of the building. And so she brings in the actual facilities manager to give me a tour. And so he's going through, I'm like, okay, well, how can I get information? How can I get findings out of this? So I start saying, we have some potential investors, but the last company they invested in, they actually got breached. Someone broke into their building. I'm like, so I need to know what's fucked up here so we can fix it. And he started spilling everything. He's like, well, the cameras are plugged in, but we're not really recording. If we have people coming in, we leave the back door propped open so they don't have to go through the receptionist. He started giving me, I didn't even have to go and do anything else. He gave it all to me. And so as we're walking through, he starts asking me about all these companies I'm going to be meeting with, which I wasn't prepared for. And so I was like, well, I said I had a meeting with 3 different companies and I wanted to bring them in. I said, what's that process like? How can I actually get these people in to give them a tour? He said, oh, well, let me introduce you to Jenna. And she's the one that would host all that. And so I'm sitting there talking to Jenna and she's like, okay, when do you want these people to come in? I'm like, well, by end of the week would be great because I'm only here for a week. And she's like, oh, no, we're busy. And I put myself in that person's shoes. I was like, oh, hell no, you're not busy. These are potential investors. We need to get them in here now. And so I was really able to get into that mindset of that person, and that person apparently was a bitch, but, and then I felt bad because she scheduled it and I never came back. So, whoops. But getting in that mindset was super helpful. It's been very beneficial to my career. Not making friends.